It is hard to imagine starting this video with any other piece of music. Microsoft Flight Simulator is arguably the most significant series in aviation simulation, and it's quite possibly that without its existence, and people like Bruce Artwick, whom you might not even know, many of today's enthusiasts, engineers and pilots would have never earned their wings. Today, flight simulators are a common product among hundreds of other simulators and games, but back in 1970s, many would have struggled to envision that such a simplistic-looking flight simulator with little resemblance to reality would evolve into a simulator that in its current iteration offers our entire planet Earth. Dozens of meticulously crafted aircraft cockpits, every single airport on our planet, all with real-time flight simulation. Yes, this simulation's origins trace back to the 70s, and it's time we delve into the life of the man behind this legendary simulation. Just as the legendary Altuve Turmovic series has Oleg Maddox, Flight Simulator has its own spiritual father, and if combat flight simulation belongs to the Russian developer, then it can only be balanced out by an American software engineer, Bruce Artwick, a native of Illinois, where he studied electrical engineering at the university. His thesis, a versatile computer-generated dynamic flight display, was the first building block of today's flight simulation. It was the initial proof that computers were already capable enough for a flight simulation. And so in 1977, he released the first flight simulator for the Apple II. This was also the last simulator without the Microsoft attachment, as this simulator became one of the best-selling game titles on Apple, prompting Microsoft to immediately emerge from its shell to snatch up the brand for itself. Thus began a new era, for which Microsoft bought a front row seat, since Microsoft wanted to demonstrate the graphical capabilities of its devices with the simulator. Flight Simulator received a beautiful graphical overhaul for its time, and with incredibly creative title designations like Flight Simulator 2.0, Flight Simulator 3.0, Flight Simulator 4.0, and even 5.0 and 5.1 were born. In 1988, Aces Game Studio, Bruce Artwick organization back then, was also founded. Its creator was of course Bruce Artwick, and it served as a subsidiary of Microsoft for the development of this flight simulation. Essentially, the simulator evolved quite linearly for several years, and it's safe to say that selling the same title every few years isn't just a modern trend, but a historical tradition to create the longest possible straw from which corporate companies just need to sip and sip and sip and the money just pours in. Fortunately, at this pace, depending purely on Bernoulli's equation, we gradually arrive at a product that more and more resembles our childhood. And we are now entering the era I would call the road to the Flight Simulator X. Each of these successors added something to the pile, forming the steps leading to the most influential flight simulator. Flight Simulator 98, 1997, took an advantage of 3D graphics cards and DirectX, allowing for a virtual cockpit.
Microsoft Flight Simulator 2000. Let's fly over New York City.
John, you just about crashed into the Empire State Building.
Hey, that would be cool.
Flight Simulator 2002 introduced air traffic control, paving the way for future multiplayer madness. Flight Simulator 2004 celebrated the history of aviation, adding icons like the Wright Flyer and the Ford Trimotor. It also laid the groundwork for a future form of eco-friendly hypersonic flight with a hot air balloon.
What in God's name is happening?
The path to perfection was thus relatively well paved, and all that was needed was to open the gates to a new simulator, with a good advertising and a solid soundtrack. Even before most people could play the latest installment, they were treated to genuinely creative advertising.
I've got a big bird coming in fast and hot. I've got to put this baby on the ground. Repeat, I've got to put this baby on the ground.
Frankfurt Tower, road travel 731. What's your position?
Heading 250, speed 200 knots. My whole life is flashing before my eyes.
Road travel 731, clear to land runway
25 left.
Roger that.
So let's see what Microsoft packed into the box of this flight simulator. For the Gold Edition, you'd find 3 discs and 3 pamphlets inside. 2 discs were for the base game installation, and the third was the acceleration add-on. So back then, you'd simply insert the first disc into your PC, and while the game installed, players could leaf through the 3 pamphlets provided by Microsoft. The first insider guide was a manual on how to install the game and introduce the basic functions of the simulator, including all its features and places to discover around the world. It also presented some in-game missions. The quick reference guide contained control elements for peripherals, including joysticks and gamepads. Just wait a moment, it's time to swap the discs. The pamphlet for the acceleration add-on introduces new aircraft and missions. The entire collection of pamphlets is nicely stylized and still gives a premium product feel even after more than 10 years. And so, after installing the game from 2 discs, a new world opened for the virtual aviation fans on October 10, 2006, and FSX would remain at the forefront for many years to come. Probably everyone who has ever played FSX remembers the blue stylized screen with a 3D ultralight model that appeared when it launched. Honestly, when I first started the game over New York to film the transition into the world of FSX, I thought this game had nothing more to offer, and that the scenarios from Al2 1946 video, where an old game delivers an experience that today's simulators often cannot, probably wouldn't repeat. To confirm this, I tried a few missions, and it's quite possible that even this old game will be worth getting a DVD drive for. I decided to head straight up. The flight model, especially for helicopters, is relatively simple. The turbulence is more or less static, but it flies well and the cockpit itself doesn't look catastrophically outdated. But as a proper self-proclaimed professional helicopter pilot, after a first training mission, which ended in a disaster, I decided to skip to the oil rig mission. We are tasked with bringing the safety instructor on board the oil rig during this challenging weather. We get briefed about the mission during the flight. Sadly, you don't get to hear the briefing since the sound of the radio actually came from my monitor, while the helicopter sound came from my speakers. I don't know if it's intended, but it did add a bit of immersion for me, for sure. We fly past some boats and a big boy boat, so you know the route is pretty frequented, but we eventually close the distance. The oil rig actually looks pretty decent for 2006. Now what the dispatch says is that we are clear to land, so I attempt a landing, but then explosions happen and we have to abort, and the whole oil rig starts to fall apart. I guess they really needed that safety instructor and that maybe I should not have been wasting time with boat flybys. But as the pieces of pipeline almost hit my helicopter, the game actually asks me to decide whether I want to attempt a rescue. I mean, what? What? Well, that is well unexpected, and of course we do, right? The first survivor runs out onto the helicopter deck, so we pick him up as he's waving very roughly in our direction. We then scan the oil rig for survivors. The next survivor on the opposite side of the rig is in a less favorable landing position, but we still manage to maneuver in carefully from the seaside to rescue him. And just as he gets in, holy cow, that was just barely. The next one is positioned on the bridge between the platforms. We maneuver into position carefully, and as it starts to explode all around us, the worker jumps in and dispatch confirms all members are picked up and that we should now return. Somehow though, I get a mission failure.
Mission failed. We'll get him next time.
Despite the mission continuing normally, so it seems everything is alright. We once again pass by the big boat and safely land on our base. We shut off the helicopter, I mean that was fire. We are on fire. So that is why the mission says failure. We are on fire. Well, what can you do? This was epic. I mean, the career mode in Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024 does not even hold a candle. And we will get to it later. The dispatch has actually voiceovers and the animations. I mean, it really just makes me glad I only had Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024 on a Game Pass. I've never had this fun and thrilling experience in a civil flight simulator. I mean, it does not rival the thrill of threading the needle with the SC-47, because the SC-47 is the speediest and most maneuverable homeboy ever to go below flight level. But you would know that if you were part of the SC-47 Discord and would be following the development journey of the SC-47 on this channel to regain back its wings and once again fly, albeit in a virtual simulation. Obviously, FSX offers more than just one oil rig mission, and during its glory days, the meme production of the multiplayer servers was peaking, the modding community was incredibly active, giving the community a massive library of planes to fly with for free, and even missions, which are just as cool as this one. Now, if you run out of these cool missions of the base game, there are always the Acceleration Pack and community-made missions. Microsoft then went silent for about 14 years. And therefore, Aces Game Studios, founded by Bruce Artwick that created the flight simulator and pioneered these virtual wings, was closed on January 22nd, 2009. But Microsoft Flight Simulator would make a return. And while the world was forced to cherish other flight simulators such as X-Plane or Prepared, Microsoft, this time hiding behind the name of Xbox Game Studios, decided to make a comeback, and as the 2010s came to an end, Microsoft took the throne back. The entire globe recreated with a specialized algorithm, so that even your house, yes, your house, is in the game. Every active airport available, simply there was no competition for casual flight simulation. This was the new king. And while there were a few technical issues, the launch was mostly well done, considering this would be the first time for such technology to be used at such a scale in a video game. Essentially, the game is great when it comes to casual aviation. The flight dynamics are good, not the best, and the newest X-Plane surely takes the crown there. But it is very clear that Microsoft targeted a more casual audience, as the marketing suggests. And they have succeeded. So while the flight model may not deliver the most realistic experience, it is still very serviceable and true to real life. Though if you seek 100% realistic airplanes, you will have to turn to third-party add-ons. The lack of career mode and quality missions meant that Microsoft Flight Simulator was more of a sandbox rather than a full experience for many. Yet, it did create more than solid enough base to build upon, and its successor was supposed to build a skyscraper upon it. As 2024 was coming around, the successor to Microsoft Flight Simulator was arriving on a hypersonic hype train. And the expectations were massive, career mode allowing us to experience the thrill of search and rescue, firefighting and other content surpassing all that was before. And what emerged on November 19th, 2024 was a bit different from what was advertised. Meow! And when I mean different, I mean buggy. When the game released, the amount of game-breaking bugs almost turned the game into the world's first insect simulator, with every available airport. That's nice, at least something. And comparing it to the missions from FSX or even mods such as NeoFly for MSFS would not make for the kind of epic battle, but rather a chaotic front retreat of 1939 kinda situation. Now, to be fair, this rock does have a lot more detail, and underneath the bug-infested surface does lie an evolution of the sim. But I'm just glad that I got the game through Game Pass and not wasted the coin on a game that still, until this day of writing the script, is not fully fixed. This, sadly, is the byproduct of games today being released online, since back in the FSX days, what was on the disc was final and needed to work like a well-oiled machine. But not to end on a bad note, Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024 is a step in the right direction. While it may not be bugless, it is a fine choice for a casual simulator, and this is where the franchise stands today after 43 years of ups and downs. I would really like if you would share your thoughts in the comment section and maybe even check out more this channel has to offer, including IL-2 1946 video, which covers the combat flight simulation for a change. Alright, that'll do. Goodbye.